I think you just have to be very transparent with your co-founder about your goals and where you want to get to. And that probably brings me to my second point is the misaligned vision and goals. You just have to start very early and define your mission, your vision, your long-term goals together. You can kind of you might be working on the same problem sort of independently and find each other. And that's actually really great. You just have to make sure if you do come together that you are going to share those long-term goals and checkpoints.
Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you to Founder DNA, How to Build a Strong Co-Founder Relationship from Day One. I am Megan Kopelove. I'm the head of the pipeline for Founder Institute. Um, I would like to introduce Robert Maddox, who is the founder of Startup Oasis. We're collaborating with Startup Oasis on this event. Uh, Robert is a full stack customer experience professional. He specializes in strategy and operation. He has over 7 years of startup experience working to build vibrant communities to help businesses start to scale. He's the co-founder of Startup Oasis. He hosts virtual and in-person co-founder matching events, including monthly meetups in Atlanta, Georgia, with a world tour planned in 2025. Anything I missed, Robert, that you want to add? Oh, you are muted.
Thanks, Megan. I appreciate it. Great intro. Tuning in here from Atlanta, Georgia. We have a great event we run here every month called Startup Oasis, like she said. We have done pop-ups in different cities. You might have seen us in San Francisco after TechCrunch the previous 2 years. We also made it to New York City, Denver, and Berlin, and we want to come maybe to your city in the future. So we do have a virtual event coming up in January. So if you want to come to that, we'll post that link in the chat. And yeah, me and Maker have a great conversation today, and I'd love to just share your thoughts on what we think makes for finding great co-founders.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just going to do a quick housekeeping. So the format of today's event will be a fireside chat, about 20 minutes. Then we will jump into speed networking and then breakout groups. So with that, we will get into it. Robert, Startup Oasis has been all about connecting founders with resources and people they need to succeed. In your experience, what are the key DNA traits of a successful founder, and how do those traits translate to a successful co-founder relationship?
Yeah, I could definitely think of a couple off the top of my head. So I think maybe the first is going to be visionary thinking. And you've got to have the ability to see opportunities and to conceptualize innovative solutions and inspire your co-founders and your team members with a long-term vision. Because you really want to align the team around shared goals and inspire other people to pursue your mission, even through challenges. Because I'm sure, as most of us know here, that we are not on an easy path as startup founders. And that being said, you also need to have resilience and grit, and you just have to have perseverance to overcome relentless obstacles, countless obstacles, because there can be something that might come up every day, every month, every week, every year. And you've got to be able to bounce back from failure very quickly. I think we all know now that it's not a bad thing for failure. You just want to learn from those mistakes and come back stronger and with better solutions. And doing all that, you want to maintain optimism and a positive mindset. Because when you have resilience, it fosters trust and commitment, and you'll help co-founders weather difficult periods without losing momentum for your startup. If you feel defeated, you could lose confidence in your team and investors, and you just got to keep that positive momentum moving forward at all times. And I'd say another big one is adaptability. So you might have to come to a pivot at some point, and you have to adapt to changing markets, to changing team members, and sometimes changing co-founders, and learn very quickly from feedback from the changing markets, from different people, from different challenges. And I'd say adaptable founders can collaborate very effectively, and you want to embrace diverse viewpoints and adjust your strategies without having an ego. And I'd say probably maybe the last one that comes to mind is risk tolerance. And you have to be comfortable with uncertainty, and you have to take calculated risks for potential rewards. And so risk tolerance can encourage co-founders to pursue bold strategies. And one thing I do with my co-founder is if we want to sort of pivot on a dime, we always tell the other person first what the pivot might be. And we always give each other about 24 hours to think about it before we actually take action. So that way might make sense after a couple hours, and we're not just moving for the sake of moving. So those would be sort of my keys for success for being a successful founder.
So I want to just touch on two things you talked about. So at the top of it, it was kind of goal alignment. So making sure you have a shared goal that you and your co-founder, are working towards. But then when you talk about, needing to pivot, how do you, I think, weigh the goal alignment that you kind of maybe meet on at the start with the needs to pivot and change in real time and be adaptive?
Yeah, that's a great follow-up point. I some advice that was given to me years ago was to have strong convictions, but hold them loosely. So you want to have some principles and views that you hold very deeply and close to yourself, and those that'll be act as a compass for your decision making. But also at the same time, know that our world changes every day, every hour, every second, every month, every week. So sometimes you might need to edit and alter and improve those convictions that you have, so that way you can start with goals and start with a compass, but just know that those goals and the compass might evolve over time.
Awesome. So at FI, we emphasize the importance of founder DNA. We have our DNA assessment. Um, we look for traits like adaptability, commitment, grit. How can co-founders ensure that they share these traits, and how do you balance those when you're building a team?
Yeah, so I think you just have to have open dialogue and open communication line with your founder right from the jump. It has to be people or someone that you can talk to at any point. I can basically call my co-founder at any time if I need to talk to him about certain things that I'm thinking about or things that I want to do in the future. So at the very beginning, you definitely have to have in-depth conversations about your motivations. Why are you a founder? Why are you in this sort of market? Why are you trying to solve this problem? And have conversations about your values and your long-term goals and working styles before formalizing the partnership. I think if your long-term vision isn't sort of shared, or you both can't help each other get to where you want to be, that might create an issue down the road when challenges and problems come up. So why should this matter? It creates a foundation of trust and ensures alignment on those core traits like commitment and adaptability. And then I'd say something else that you could do to workshop this early on is simulate a potential challenge or a scenario that you see yourself in, or that you've seen yourself in the past. And you could see how you could work with your co-founder, potential co-founder, on problem solving, the angle to take, and decision making, and how you get through the setbacks.
Yeah, I think, when we look at kind of co-founder pairs that are going to be long-term successful, we kind of factor in trust, dependability, things like that. Outside of just, if you've got somebody who is very risk tolerant, then you maybe want somebody who's a little less risk tolerant to kind of rein them in and balance them out. But at the end of the day, I think kind of what you're touching on is a concept we also look at, which is psychological safety, really, and the belief that someone can take interpersonal risks without the fear of negative consequences to their self image or status or without retaliation. And so that an individual really feels comfortable expressing themselves and taking those risks and being vulnerable with a co founder without being judged or punished. Right. And so I think without that, you don't necessarily get that honesty between two co founders. You don't necessarily have a healthy co-founder relationship where people feel like they can fail in front of the other and then admit it, and then find the right path forward. And I would say psychological safety is it's a hard one to judge. I don't think necessarily anyone from that outside can. It really, you have to be in that relationship to know, hey, do I feel uh comfortable being vulnerable or failing in front of this other person, right? But the components of that being trust, open communication, respectful behavior, and an ability to make mistakes and then find constructive ways out of that, and empowerment, autonomy, things like that, and really creating a cooperative culture. And so, yeah, in terms of kind of psychological safety, that has been one of the key components. Research has shown to bore out kind of long-term success in early stage startups. But yeah, I agree. I think that's kind of a critical component we found as well. Um, I guess
And
kind
yeah,
of,
the commitment
yeah.
to continuous feedback, right? I think you just have to build a culture of frequent and honest feedback for the other person, for their ideas, for the business. And that way it's much easier to address any sort of gaps that come up. So again, you want to be able to have regular check-ins with your potential co-founder and agree upon upholding those standards.
Yeah, exactly. I think so kind of going off that, the process can be a roller coaster. What do you think some of the common pitfalls that new co-founders face are, and how do they prevent those from undermining their partnership?
Yeah, again, I think it kind of, poor communication. There's been many wars have started, throughout human history because of just misunderstandings, maybe from different languages or from different meanings. So I think just, again, I can't probably stress this enough, is just having open lines of communication and understanding if there are sort of some gaps in communication, how you guys can just figure out a way to find common ground and communicate your needs and concerns with the co-founder. So I think, and also too, that comes with the transparency. I think you just have to be very transparent with your co-founder about your goals and where you want to get to. And that probably brings me to my second point, is the misaligned vision and goals. You just have to start very early and define your mission, your vision, your long-term goals together. You can kind of you might be working on the same problem sort of independently and find each other, and that's actually really great. You just have to make sure, if you do come together, that you are going to share those long-term goals and checkpoints. And then I think another sort of pitfall could be undefined roles and responsibilities. Many times your roles as co-founders may overlap and your duties may be unclear, or there might be boundaries that need to be set. And this can lead to inefficiencies and frustrations. So what you definitely want to do is just open up a Google Doc. This can be very simple and free, and just outline your specific responsibilities that each person's going to have based off your skills and, very importantly, your interests, right? Because you don't want to do something that you hate every day. You'll lose interest and you'll be passionate and you'll give up. And you also want to be flexible for these roles and responsibilities. So just be open to evolving responsibilities as your company and your team grows, as it inevitably and hopefully will. And then another one would be, I think, decision-making paralysis. So that could be from disagreements about how to move forward on a decision, or lack of authority. So if nobody wants to make a decision, that can both stall progress. So maybe a good thing to do here would be to define who has the final say in specific areas and create a tie-breaking mechanism if, it's just you and your partner disagreeing on something. And definitely assign decisions to the co-founder with expertise in that domain. Like, for example, I direct our virtual goals when it comes to content. My co-founder is head of fundraising and partnerships. It's something that we're both very strong at, and we can just divide and conquer.
Yeah, I think you brought up two important points, which is functional diversity. So making sure that you have people who have, two co-founders who excel at different things. I mean, there might be some, it could be a Venn diagram. There can be some in the middle, but really saying, hey, there's uh, we've got somebody who's good at tech or somebody who can do sales, and then have somebody who can, be really good at managing people within the company, or making sure that you just have that functional diversity. I think, yeah, that is very important. But I also think that um, having people who have different traits can be really critical to offset each other. You talked about decision paralysis, and making sure that you have somebody who is decisive, who's proactive, who's autonomous. And I think it can be a double-edged sword when you have two very autonomous people who are maybe working in different directions, but then also if you have no one who's particularly autonomous, that can be um, yeah, that can also be a challenge. So I guess I do have a thought on our founder Adeo constantly refers to co-founders relationships as marriages. Um, when you're talking about kind of building this trust, starting these Google Docs, figuring all of this out, how how early does that start? Does that start day one, that when do you really make somebody your co-founder, and when do you start kind of building in these systems?
Yeah, I think the situation can start off kind of fluid. I think that, you don't need to sign a document and maybe an NDA on day one. You don't need to make things formal or permanent on day one. You just have to get to know that person, right? I think that it's kind of like a marriage and dating. You probably want to get to know that person first before you commit to them for the rest of your life, or for however long, for a long period of time. So yeah, open up a Google Doc as soon as possible, and start jamming out, the responsibilities, the vision, the goals, where you want to be in 2, 3 years. Even open up Google Sheets, if you have financial models in place, that way you can see numbers. So I'd say as soon as possible, start a jam. That's kind of what we do at Startup Oasis. Is we get founders an opportunity to let people know what their business is about, and they get to go to breakout rooms and talk to people about their business in deeper details. And that way they can kind of see if people in that room are a good fit to be a co-founder or a team member, or they might just be there and provide some good feedback. But we always say that you always want to take one step forward at a time. Don't sit still, and don't try to take a big leap forward to make up for lost time.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Um, so, in a world where co-founders often come from different backgrounds, how important is it to ensure that both technical and non-technical founders are equally invested in the company's long-term vision and success?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important that these two type of people can come together and be aligned. I think why this matters, you have to have unified leadership. So a startup will thrive when its leaders are present in a unified front to its early team members and employees, to customers, and very importantly, investors. So when people see misalignment, this can create confusion and erode trust with everybody that you interact with and beyond. And I think that you also have to have complementary strengths. So the technical founders will often focus on product innovation and technical execution, while non-technical founders might excel in strategy, business development, and or other customer engagement. So an equal investment ensures that these strengths are applied towards the shared goals. And that's kind of what we do at Oasis. Again, we kind of bring together technical and non-technical founders because the biggest sort of needs that founders have are either building the product or go to market. So that's where we can kind of bring these people together, bring their expertise, knowing that one can't really exist without the other, and everyone is sort of equally important um, in this venture.
Awesome. Yeah. And I guess just one final question before we wrap up. As someone who's worked with numerous startups, what advice would you give founders who are in the early stages of looking for a co founder? And what are some red flags or warnings that they should look out for?
Yeah, I'd say and I say this with like try to say this as respectfully as I can. Is it's almost like your ideas are not valuable, your idea is not unique, it's the execution, right? So I'd say if founder says I have the best idea in the world, but like I can't talk about it right now, I need to, we need to get investment first. That's a big red flag, because most of the time you're not gonna be able to go to an investor with an idea on the back of a napkin or a nice PowerPoint or a 10-page Word document with the idea. They want to see traction. They want to see revenue. They want to see a team that can scale. They want to see execution. So just safeguarding an idea, I think, is a huge red flag. You want to be action oriented and a bias towards action. Um, and then I think my other piece of advice would be to try to create exposure for your idea. You might not be ready to find a co-founder just yet. You might be too early stage for that. So I think what I would do there is start a podcast about your market segment, about your problem, about your solution. So that way you can kind of really ingratiate yourself with the information that you want to send to others. And that way it can be a way for people to come to you, an inbound strategy to 5 co-founders and teammates and investors come to you. You could also create content. You could also create social media around, create more social media posts around the ideas that you're trying to bring to market.
Great. No, all of that is helpful advice. And we appreciate you joining today. If you can make sure you put a link to that January event so everyone can join that as well. Um, Otherwise, again, we're going to start some speed networking in just a minute. When you do start, please start with your name, your startup, in a one sentence pitch, and what type of co founder you're looking for, just to make sure that we can move that networking along. Again, I want to thank everyone else for joining. Of course, if you are interested in our DNA assessment, please feel free to apply at fi.co/apply or test your co-founder at dna.fi.co. And I think all of those links are going to be in the chat, as well as the link for Robert's next event. So we really appreciate that. We will now be moving to the speed networking. And again, thank you so much for joining. Any other questions in the chat, our support team can answer. And then, of course, there will be the breakout tables after the speed networking. Awesome.